Robert Daly is director of the Kissinger Institute on China and the United States. He joins us for another edition of Now. Robert, welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, mixed signals from China. A couple of speeches with very different positions in both. Tell us about that.
Yes. Well, as you know, late in 2014 in November, there was an APEC summit, and President Obama and the General Secretary Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the Communist Party, met in Beijing, following 2 years in which relations had seemed to get progressively worse, worrisomely so. And they announced a series of agreements, and it seemed that China was launching a new era of smile diplomacy. So we're in a period in which we're asking, does this represent a real change in goals for China, or is it a change in tactics? What's the right response to smile diplomacy? Then in December and January, there were two speeches that gave very different signals. Wang Yang, one of the leaders of China, gave a speech in Chicago in December, in which he was relatively conciliatory, if that's the right word. We recognize American leadership. We want to be a part of the international system, although we also want to improve it and change it, but we acknowledge the system, and we don't have any idea or means of challenging American leadership. And this was done at what was primarily an economic meeting. And again, coming at the background of 2 years of the opposite sort of rhetoric, this seems sort of odd, but it was given in an American forum to Americans. Then in January, we had a general who's known for his bellicose statements about the United States, including that our foreign policy had a case of what he called erectile dysfunction, stated in Chinese to a Chinese military group that of course China was going to challenge the United States. Of course it was coming. He didn't use the word threat, and he even acknowledged that many in China were saying we wanted to play on the international and America's field, and he was saying no, that the challenge is coming. So what are we to make of these very different signals?
Well, it's not new to have politicians or political speeches playing to a particular audience, right? That's not something that's new. Right. So how do we begin to decipher this and decide whether it's significant or just business as usual?
Well, it's hard to know because, of course, China keeps changing, which makes analysis difficult. And it used to be that our assumption was that anytime a major figure spoke, any text had to be cleared in advance and anything had to reflect the thinking of the top leadership. And now Americans argue a good deal about this. How much control does Xi Jinping really have over the military in particular? There's a big discussion in academic circles about this issue right now. And it's clear that many of these generals in particular have a little more leeway to speak their minds. I would say...
So is that a case of him not having control or him providing more latitude?
Well, I think that the Chinese have, over the years, noted that in the United States there are many different voices. There are contradictory voices, and it makes it very hard for them to get a read on us, and it has made it very easy for us to distance ourselves from statements we don't like. And so part of this, I believe, is them taking a page out of our book.
Interesting.
They speak with different voices, and we are never quite steady on our feet responding. And in fact, the things that Wang Yang said and the things that the General Zhu Chenghu said, I think both things are true from China's point of view, for now. And if you look back at Chinese statements over the past 20 years, including Deng Xiaoping's statements, about China's intentions vis-a-vis the international system, vis-a-vis challenging America, vis-a-vis becoming a superpower, they've always said, oh, no, not us. But there's always been a not yet, or we're not ready clause at the end of that.
Beyond not yet, is there some advantage for China to maintain a space back in the pack? Number two, we try harder?
It for now has big advantages for China because in fact China is making major moves and making major investments, putting its money where its mouth is in the Maritime Silk Road Project, the New Silk Road Project, the Asian Investment Bank, the BRICS Bank. But if it gets too far out ahead, if it is seen as a superpower on a par with the United States, then it will also be asked to take more risks and take more responsibility for what they would call being a world policeman, or in some cases for providing aid.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Comes great responsibility, and with great responsibility comes a violation of one of China's most sacred principles of diplomacy, which is no interference in the internal affairs of other countries. But of course they're going to interfere in accordance with their interests. It's a complex world.
That's what superpowers do.
That's right.
A final thought on, excuse me, Robert, the current status of relations. You said there was this period of at least malaise, if not maybe even some negativity creeping in. But after the president's visit and a joint announcement on climate, are we now entering an era of better relations, enhanced relations?
We've entered an era in which the style would imply that relations are better. We are emphasizing the positive. We are emphasizing cooperation.
What's the substance say?
The substance says that China's fundamental goals and America's fundamental goals, to be fair, which are in some cases incommensurate with each other, have not changed. China has realized that its more assertive diplomacy and action of the past 2 years has not only not won it friends in Asia Pacific, but has pushed some of them closer to the United States. So I think that tactically, certain styles of assertiveness are seen as failing, and China's now gone into a new phase of smile diplomacy, accentuate the positive, but against the same goals. And there are in the background murmurings. Japan has just reported that actually they have scrambled jets more frequently in response to Chinese and Russian incursions into or approaches into its airspace in the past month or two than they had in the previous 2 years. So the jury's out.
That's a little troubling. Well, thank you. I look forward to next month and see what's the latest news from China.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Robert.